Hi, everybody. You're watching Act.tv. Julianna here. We are going to present to you another kick-ass progressive, as we have been doing. We've been talking about progressives that Marianne Williamson's endorsee summit have endorsed, meaning they are super progressives and they are running. Now, we've been doing this for a couple of weeks, and I've noticed some comments from some folks out there saying, why should we even work within the system? Because the system is corrupt. What is the point of running a progressive candidate when it's in these districts when it's such a long shot that they're going to win? And questions that suggest that we're all completely dejected, which we rightfully might be. But here to answer that question, instead of me answering it, which I feel like I've done 100 times, author, writer, leader, activist, whose new book we just spoke about in the preceding segment, John Nichols, is here to join us from The Nation. Hi, John.
Hey, it's good to be with you.
It's great to see you again after 3 seconds. Well, these clips go on YouTube, so sometimes they'll be standing alone. So can you respond to folks who maybe are feeling rightfully dejected and don't really want to meet another progressive candidate unless they're already Bernie Sanders or unless they're already AOC? We have a lot of people trying to push out either establishment Democrats or Republicans in Senate districts, state house districts, etc. And there's been quite a bit of pushback about why should we work within a corrupt system?
Well, you work within a corrupt system because maybe that's the way you get the leverage to end the corruption. Right? You work outside and inside. And I've always been an advocate for an inside-outside strategy. It is totally appropriate to work within the system because, if you're trying to, open up something that's tightly packed, right? You may have to, get in there and leverage it a little bit and then you pop it open, right? Mm-hmm. Well, you go in the system not to maintain the system, not to keep it working as it is, but to pop it open, to create that opportunity where you can actually make change. And it is sometimes valuable to work outside the two-party system. Bernie Sanders did that. He came up as an independent. He has always been elected as such. It is sometimes valuable to work within the system. AOC did that. She challenged a Democratic incumbent in a primary. She won and did it that way. And to me, that's the answer on all of this is you're seeking the change and you will do it by whatever method may work. And I've never been so respectful of the Democratic and Republican parties as some people who say don't work within the system. I know that some people think, oh, they're all powerful and stuff like this. I actually think that they're pretty pathetic, pretty tragic institutions that you can actually upend. Sometimes very quickly and sometimes over a long period of time, but it's worth doing. And in the new book, I talk a lot about systemic problems. And, when you're talking about coronavirus criminals and pandemic profiteers, these are different players. Many of the criminals operating in the political sector, many of the profiteers in the economic sector, but you could flip them around, right? The game gets played in all sorts of different ways. And what I argue is that we need systemic change. And you cannot get to systemic change unless you've got some control over that system. Now, maybe there's a general strike and you're doing it from outside, right? But that's hard to organize and doesn't always happen. Maybe it's inside by electing a new class of people, and sometimes that can work. The bottom line is you don't have to be at odds with one another. I always remember that AOC classically on one of the nights of a State of the Union address, instead of being at the Capitol, I hope I've got this right, she was with striking workers in Hunts Point in New York. Mm-hmm. And she's saying, this is where I need to be on this day. I hope I've got the scenario right there. And the bottom line is that you can be an inside and outside player. So that's my answer. And the critical thing is that we need it now more than ever, because the truth of the matter is that the system is so corrupt. It is so dysfunctional. It is so wrong-headed that we got hit by a pandemic And instead of a pure, decent, humane public health response, we literally had politicians who lied to us, who blocked appropriate responses. And at the same time, we had billionaires who enriched themselves, corporations that ran excess profits. That's a lousy system.
John,
and that's a system that needs to change.
Several questions have come up while I've been hearing your response. One is many people think that all of the players that you've mentioned, whether it's be Bernie Sanders or AOC, are all considered within the system, whereas the outside of the system would be. I mean, sometimes people even consider labor within the system, but the outside of the system would be something like the Sunrise Movement, and then they get invited into the system, and then there's a whole conversation about whether that's good or not good, etc. And I'm going to two-part you and then let you go. Let so that you can answer. And other people believe that once AOC and some of the other squad folk got in, then they've sold out here and there. I see that all over. This idea that they didn't force the vote, and so they're sellouts, and so now we just hate our own and cannibalize our own people. And these aren't people on the right. These were people with expectations on the left that you would be, I guess, a perfect candidate. And I don't know your thoughts on those two places.
Look, I do think it's really challenging. It is incredibly challenging to step up and seek public office and to get into a position of power, and then to figure out how to strike that balance, when to work within the system because you think you can actually achieve something, and when to upend the system and say, that this is a failure, this is wrong, what we're doing. And I really do understand that from the outside that can look like, oh, you sold out, you're frustrating, you didn't do what I want you to do. But to me, the greatest leaders have always been those who've been able to strike that balance effectively, where they see an opportunity to get something, they do it. When the opportunities are blocked, then they upend the system. And we saw a really classic example of it during the course of the pandemic, or this ongoing course of the pandemic, with the eviction assistance. And Cori Bush, the representative from St. Louis, Missouri, worked very, very hard in Congress to try and preserve protections for people who are in a situation where they might get evicted, right? To make sure that there's federal moratorium on evictions. And she didn't succeed, right? It didn't happen on the floor of Congress. And so what she did when it came time for the recess was, instead of going home and saying, well, we didn't succeed, we failed, that's that, she went out on the steps of the Capitol and slept on those steps with other activists, not with members of Congress, but with activists, to highlight this issue. She used her platform, her prominence, to get attention to it. What happened? The Biden administration actually moved and extended the eviction moratorium, at least for a time. Courts have been a mess on that. Similarly, recently, Jamal Bowman was out on the steps of the Capitol with protesters, risking arrest because what was happening in the Capitol was insufficient. And that's what I would always ask for. I would ask for leaders who are willing to try to use every opportunity within the system to make it work. But if it doesn't work, then to step out of it and to push it and to challenge it using the prominence that they've gotten from their elected position. And that's rare, to be honest. And that's, I think, why you see this sort of rising dissident grouping within the Democratic Party and outside of it, challenging a lot of incumbents and saying, you don't do this. You're not willing to go outside if the process isn't working. And so I think that's where I respect the people that are doing the experiment, that are trying. And I know they'll make mistakes. And I know you aren't going to see perfection at every turn. But as somebody who really wants to see radical change, I don't want to foreclose any option for achieving that change.
I feel the same way. That's how I feel. John Nichols, author of the new book, Coronavirus Criminals and Pandemic Profiteers: Accountability for Those Who Caused the Crisis. I'm about to showcase a woman who is running for Texas 20, District 20 in the U.S. Congress, Jessica Mason. She grew up in poverty in South Dallas. When she was 7, her mother could not afford $20 for medication to treat her asthma. It resulted in her having a collapsed lung. She vows and says that, Washington will not change her. She was in the Navy. She enlisted and then was able to put herself through college. She served as a medic for 5 years, and she really wants to fight, on her platform is fighting corporate money and the way it influences politics. She is one of the, unbossed types, and I'm not sure she is awesome. And I'm not sure if her chances are all that great in that district. And we are showcasing a number of people who are in that position, long shotters. Can you talk to people about why it's important that even if it's a long shot, these folks continue to run for these seats?
Well, yeah, I'm not here to endorse or disendorse or whatever any individuals. I'll let you do that. But what I will tell you is that that as somebody who's covered a lot of politics over the years, I've covered a lot of long shots who ended up as winners. And the classic example I always use is Bernie Sanders himself. Bernie Sanders ran 4 statewide races in Vermont before he won an election. He lost 4 times. And the interesting thing about that was that each time he went into those races, he got a little more attention, he got a little more support, a little more sympathy. And ultimately, he got to a point where he stepped out of running for statewide office, but ran for mayor of Burlington and got elected by 10 votes. And so the thing to understand is that people who run as long shots often become our leaders. And they often end up with a thicker shell, like a tougher persona, because they have run and lost. They know what it's like, or they've had to take on power. AOC ran and won her first time. That was amazing. But the bottom line is that people who are willing to take that chance and who keep at it, I think often become some of our most important political figures. And one of the fascinating things about Bernie Sanders is that he got elected as mayor of Burlington, and then he ran for governor of Vermont and lost. He ran for Congress first time and lost. He was willing to run and lose because he believed in the ideas more than in his own political advancement. And ultimately that paid off, right? Ultimately that got him to a point where we now are talking about him as a relatively iconic figure. And I think that's the lesson of it. If we dismiss long shots, if we dismiss people who have uphill races, then we're ultimately dismissing the next Bernie Sanders or the next AOC or the next Jesse Jackson, or you run up the list of people who don't always win, but who take that chance. And some of them do win, and they almost always are the ones who are more courageous, more bold, and I would argue more effective.
John Nichols, thank you so much. I know you are not endorsing our endorsement person, but we are endorsing this person, Jessica Mason. Let's listen to her in her own words.
My name is Jessica Mason. I am a Navy veteran, and I currently work as an organizer in affordable housing communities across my district. But most importantly, I'm here today because of the generations of strong Black women from South Dallas that came before me. My story begins as a little girl raised in poverty because of the zip code that I lived in. I grew up in a community that was devastated by the crack epidemic, and my community was failed by political design. My mother worked 12 plus hours a day for a millionaire businessman, but she was paid starvation wages and could not afford to keep the lights on in our home. As a child, I had severe asthma attacks at night, and my mother would have to carry me to the fire station down the street just to power on my nebulizer. The medication that I needed to treat my asthma at the time cost $20, but my mother couldn't afford it. And because of that, my lung collapsed at the age of 7. I spent 3 months in the ICU. What does that say about America, the richest country in the world? How can we let Black and brown children continue to suffer and nearly die of treatable diseases because they don't have adequate insurance? In South Dallas, where I'm from, our children are more likely to develop severe asthma because of pollution. Our water pollution is worse than Flint's. Black women are dying during childbirth, and we have some of the lowest life expectancies in the state of Texas. Our healthcare system places profits over people, and it's not working for us anymore. We need Medicare for all, and that's the end of the story. We've had the same representation for 28 years, and her loyalties lie with healthcare corporations and the fossil fuel industries that fund her campaigns. She was recently seen cozying up with Senator John Cornyn in the media, touting a bipartisan corporate welfare bill to weatherize Texas's unregulated power grid. But what Texas needs is a Green New Deal and guaranteed federal jobs, massive investments in green infrastructure, not incentives to continue producing gas and coal-powered energy and further enriching the pockets of these oil executives. And with all due respect, I'm not okay with bipartisanship, and that means compromising on the rights of Black, brown, and immigrant people. So we really need to stop with the bipartisan propaganda and really advocate for the people of Texas 30. Our representative also failed to support Cori Bush's amendment on voting rights for incarcerated people, and she refuses to apologize for voting for the 1994 crime bill that has led zip codes in my district to have the highest incarceration rate in the state of Texas. How many Black men are in jail because of a joint? How many Black men are in jail because they are victims of poverty? How many Black men are killed because of irresponsible and racist policy? We need to end the privatized prison system and stop the criminalization of poverty and Blackness. I am running because I'm angry. The system has failed marginalized communities and working class people across this nation and in my community. And I can speak for hours on the injustice happening in my community. Texas leads the nation in transgender murders. Why do we still have an LGBTQ panic defense? We have Americans who are wary of getting vaccinated because they're undocumented and don't trust the system. We have working people who cannot afford food or rent. In Dallas, we have 19 affordable housing units for every 100 people in need. Black and brown women have been evicted from their homes at unprecedented rates. Majority of the people in my district live below the poverty line. And we have generations of Black and brown people who built this damn country and who have been incapable of accumulating wealth in it. We need reparations. We need unions in every single workplace. We need comprehensive immigration reform. We need representatives to stop making excuses and hiding behind procedures. This race is really a matter of life or death for the people that I love. And we must call out systemic racism and crony capitalism for what it is and be proactive in legislating policies designed to correct these failings. I hope that everyone watching tonight will take time to check out my website at jessicamasonforcongress.com. Follow us on Twitter at JessicaMasonTX and donate whatever you can to topple this system that has failed so many of us. Thank you all, and please join us in this fight against oppression. Again, my name is Jessica Mason, and I'm running for Congress in Texas 30.
Do I have to say anything else? In her own words, Jessica Mason, she is running for U.S. Congress in Texas District 30. I'm Julianna Forlano. You're watching act.tv. Our guest today was John Nichols. He's a writer for The Nation, and he is so much more. He has written 1 million books. The latest one, the one we spoke about today, is Coronavirus Criminals and Pandemic Profiteers, Accountability for Those Who Caused the Crisis. We're done. So you don't have to stay with us right now. But I meant to tell you that on Thursday, if all goes well, Chris Hedges is joining us. We're going to be talking about labor and how it's the last hope for the United States experiment with democracy. He's going to be on for the whole show. It's going to be amazing. Get your questions ready and stay tuned into ACT TV. We have a bunch of other great shows that we do here, right here on this network. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you 2 p.m. Eastern on Thursday.